There is no park, there is no school. Even worse, there's no plan to do those things anytime soon. Rather than accepting the responsibility of government, it is blame immigration. The reason you can't afford a house is because of so many immigrants buying houses.
Most of the people are either migrants or multicultural communities. So how have you understood the demographic, one, and how have you listened to or deeply understood all communities and interacted with everybody through your campaign?
The Quran also says to save one life is to save all humanity.
For a young Australian who was keen on understanding, where they set their value system from a political point of view, what's your message in terms of what things they should be doing?
If you think all politicians are idiots, that's a reason for you to enter politics.
Yeah. If you're not on the table, you're on the menu.
Yeah.
Before we get started, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode of our cutting-edge contemporary conversations. Thank you.
Welcome, Warren Kirby, MP and member for Riverstone. Thank you for your time today.
Oh, great pleasure to be here.
Before I get into the politics and what you've been doing, I would like to know your story and your growing up in your electorate, and what was the reasons for you to stand.
Well, growing up, I grew up in Schofields. That's the one of the suburbs that I now represent. And when I was growing up, it was on a paddock. We had farms beside us and in front of us and right behind us. And it was riding motorbikes, milking cows, very much an unusually rural lifestyle for a metropolitan area. And then I raised my family in Riverstone. I went to the same school as my grandfather went to, my mother went to, and my children went to. And it was a very, very different place back then. It was known as Riverstone, Schofields and districts, because the districts were all market gardens and farms. So I pursued a career in photography. I spent 30 years as a commercial photographer, and that was very beneficial in as much as I was able to travel globally and all throughout Australia and really broaden my mind to what the world had to offer. I eventually set up a photographic studio in Riverstone.
Okay.
And as a result of that, I joined the local Chamber of Commerce, which is now known as the Northwest Business Chamber. And from that, I also became a board member of the local social support agency, Northwest Community Services.
Yeah.
So I operated on a board level on both of those organisations, and I was looking at the dysfunction that was being created by massive housing uplift in the area without the necessary infrastructure to support that. And so I spent a lot of years in those roles advocating with the previous government and letting them know that we're lemmings going off the edge of a cliff here, and this is going to get worse and worse as the population keeps increasing. And that was quite frustrating. I didn't get very much feedback, certainly not a lot of positive feedback. And I eventually got to a point where I was so frustrated that I thought, well, I have to stop shouting at the outside of the building and get myself a seat on the inside. And then I had a meeting with Prukar and Stephen Barley, member for Blacktown, Prukar being our Deputy Premier now. Yeah. And they said, look, we want to win the seat of Riverstone. You know this area better than anyone. What is it that we need to do in order to achieve that? And I sat down in that meeting. I gave a very long laundry list of the areas of hard infrastructure we were falling down, a long list of the social support infrastructure we were falling down with, and some ideas on the government policies that had created the dysfunction in the first place. And about a month or so after that, I got a phone call saying, listen, would you consider running for the seat? So the seed was already in the back of my mind that if I wanted to actually affect change, that was what I needed to do. And then it was asked as to whether I'd seriously consider it, and I said yes, and one thing led to another, and now I'm here.
What was the campaign strategy to convert a safe Liberal seat to a Labor seat?
The campaign strategy was as simple as highlighting the areas of government responsibility that they weren't living up to. It literally was as simple as that. It was, we need more schools. We have extraordinarily high student numbers and almost every school in the area is over capacity. Our road network was struggling at the time and is struggling even more now. There were things like the previous government had promised the Rouse Hill Hospital for 3 elections in a row, and at no stage had they actually funded it to go ahead. So there was quite a lot of form on the previous government's part of over-promising and under-delivering, and talking to the electorate about, look, I'm a person who is a community member. I understand this community, both the old community who has been here for generations and the newer community that's coming in here. I understand the length of time it gets to have these projects up and running and finally delivered. And the only one who will fight as someone who is purely for the community. I'm not interested in becoming Premier one day or any of these sort of grand career ideas. My sole purpose is to fix a community that is floundering.
Community grows very fast, and most of the people are either migrants or multicultural communities. So how have you understood the demographic, one, and how have you listened to or deeply understood all communities and interacted with everybody through your campaign journey?
So it is a really unusual set of circumstances in Riverstone. Riverstone is a town that's 200 years old. It celebrated that back in 2010. At that time, the overwhelming majority of the population were Anglo, culturally Christian. Not as many that were actually devout Christians, but certainly culturally Christian, as well as a smattering of Greek, Italian, Maltese families, certainly in the market garden areas. Now, once the tap got turned on for new housing supply, that demographic shifted dramatically, and particularly with South Asian community. It is now home to what is almost certainly the largest Indian diaspora in New South Wales, a very large number of Sri Lankans, Pakistanis, Nepalese, and Bangladeshis, of course. And this has caused a lot of frustration within the local community because while there was turmoil with the introduction of Greeks and Italians, more or less celebrated the same gods, ate the same food, slightly better, but it was...
slightly better.
Slightly better. But culturally, there are a lot of similarities. With South Asian communities, it's an entirely different structure of worship. There are very obvious cultural differences. But what has been missed by the broader community is that the value system is identical. A love of family, great sense of humour. There is a love of sport. There are many, many things that keep us aligned. But this is hard for a community to see through, especially when the housing growth for the existing population has not been a net benefit. And this is what we found in the business chamber. While we were told before the growth really kicked off, this is going to be great for business, lots of new customers coming in, you'll be thriving as a business. But because the infrastructure was not keeping pace with the rate of population growth, business was going everywhere else but our local area. And this feeds down into people who, like my family, had lived there for generations, where you had suddenly a trip that normally took you 10 minutes in the car was now taking you 30 minutes. The trains that you would catch are overcrowded on a daily basis. The school that I went to, which had around about 300 students, was up over 1,000 students. In every measurable metrics, we were suffering rather than advantaging from this population growth. Now, it's very simple for somebody who has been in an area for their entire life to go, well, what's changed? Okay, what's changed is this new population. And this new population is all South Asian population. It's their fault that this has been caused. And then you have the other side of the equation of people who are moving into this new housing, and they're sold on a dream of, you will have a school down the road, you'll have a park down the road, you're going to be living in a suburban utopia. And then many of these people buy off the plan, or they buy before the house is built. Very super excited to move into that house. And when they move in, they discover that they've moved into a construction site. There is no park, there is no school. Even worse, there's no plan to do those things anytime soon. Maybe in another 10 or 15 years, we'll get around to building that school. Maybe in another 15, 20 years, we might build that park. And that's not great news if you have a young family and you've specifically bought into that area because you think your family is going to have all of these resources. So now you have tension on both sides. You have the community coming in, which is angry because what they were promised has not been delivered, and you have an existing community that is angry and frustrated because their world has been turned upside down and there's no net benefit to them. So sadly, in many cases, and we're seeing this emerge now in writ large, is many politicians, well, many is probably overstating, some politicians, rather than accepting the responsibility of government, and it's government's responsibility, fair and square, to provide community amenity.
Yeah.
It is not the responsibility of developers. Developers' responsibility is to make money. That's their purpose. They have to make profit for their shareholders. They have an obligation to do that, not to provide community amenity. So when the government has let you down, the politicians have a choice of sitting there and saying, you know what, we got this one wrong. We had policy settings that were not conducive to making communities. We let the pendulum swing a little bit too much towards the free market at the expense of residents in the area and new buyers into the area. Our bad, we're changing those policies and we're moving forward. Rather than do that, it is blame immigration. The reason you can't afford a house is because of so many immigrants buying houses. And I see this through my social media pages of people parroting those lines coming out. And the fact of the matter is, all of this housing was planned, signed off, approved more than a decade ago, and had nothing to do with the migratory settings that we have right now in this country. These things were well and truly planned. And I remember saying to the previous member, it's not like a meteor hit the earth and 100,000 people fell out and now you suddenly have to do something about it. This was planned. It was thought about. It was just never followed through with the areas that government is responsible for. So for me, it's very much a case of owning that responsibility and looking it straight in the face and saying, now what do we do? What do we have to do to address this problem and bring it back?
Thank you for sharing that whole context of the housing situation there. As growing up, yes, you were asked to run as a Labour MP. As growing up, what was the time or a switch in your head flicked, and then you said, okay, I need to choose a colour, I need to choose a political party. That's when I become a member. But what were the value systems ingrained in you as a young man to say, you know, I believe in these things and hence I will be part of the Labour movement?
Look, from very, very young, my grandfather was a staunch Labor supporter. My family has always been, middle to lower middle class. You know, it's not like we've ever been exceedingly wealthy, but a social conscience was drilled into me from very, very young, and an understanding of the challenges people face, sometimes through poor life decisions, but other times through just sheer circumstance. There was little that they were almost a passenger in that journey. So I've always had a left-leaning and I guess socially responsible outlook on the responsibilities of everyone throughout society, whether that is at an individual level, a business level, or a government level. That in my mind, the whole purpose of government is to support its population. If you're not going to do that, there's no reason to have a government. Let anarchy reign. But my pathway into the Labor Party was actually through the business that I set up. I set up a studio called the Good Egg Studio in Riverstone. And when I was doing that, I also I ran two businesses. One was the photographic side and one was building databases. And I needed the NBN connected in, and Riverstone was the first suburb on the mainland to get NBN connection. Now, when I was establishing that business, I sent letters to local, state, federal members. And the only one to reply to me was Michelle Rowland, who is still our federal member. And not only did she show an interest in what I was trying to create with my business and providing tips and things on how I could make that better, she helped quite a lot in getting that NBN connected. She turned up to the launch of the studio, and I thought, you know what, if this is what good representation looks like, as a nod to her, I joined the Labor Party. This is back in 2013. To be brutally honest, I turned up to 2 branch meetings and thought, this is not for me. This is boring. This is a bunch of old people sitting around a room complaining about things that they've got no intention of changing. At the time, I was I was a platinum frequent flyer on domestic flights throughout Australia, which gives you an indication of how often I was flying and how often I was away. I need to concentrate more on my business than this politics thing. That's really not for me. Then, as I say, as I got further involved in the business chamber, further involved in the local social support agency, that was what I guess radicalised me into a deeper understanding of how dramatically politics influences people's day-to-day lives and how poor policy decisions can exacerbate the circumstances that put people into terrible situations, or it can provide fertile ground for people to thrive. And so politics was what created the problem that we were experiencing in the town, and politics was the only thing that was going to get us out of it. So I played the political game of advocating as an individual business, as a long-time resident of the area, as a board member on social support, as a board member on a collective chamber. And that, as I say, was not as successful as I had hoped it would be. Perhaps naively, I thought, well, if I just put that perspective to the local MP, I know the local MP is supposed to have that overarching view, but I also understand that they're very, very busy. They have other priorities that they need to deal with. So perhaps that local voice would provide some insight to that MP and get them to really activate and work and shine a spotlight on it. But that was not.
I think that's a good pedigree in terms of somebody who was putting their hand up, somebody who ran a business, who's advocated for his own communities and sports agencies and all of that stuff before they put their hand up or being asked to put their hand up. But generically speaking, on the right and the left, on the both sides of the politics, on the left somebody's finishes his education, goes to the union and works in the union and become member state or federal. On the other side, become a staffer. On the blue side, become a staffer and learns the politics of the internal
become a councillor,
branch and
become a mayor,
and then you go up. But without having any strong life experiences, without running a business, without running any entity, without running how to deal with multiple layers of government, doing regulation, doing governance, and doing documentation for different departments, do not understand the red tape, how difficult it is before they join in or put their hand up. Does not give them a great perspective. So now, because you have interacted with the communities, you have a great perspective of what was the real issues and challenges, and hence you can advocate in the right and focused manner rather than talking points. But politics love the binary, the left or the right. I'm good and you are bad. On the political binary of the left and the right, where do you see the education conversation sit? Where do you see the health conversation sit? What do you mean when you say you are on the left of the politics and you focus on housing? So on that matter, what does left mean than right means?
Yeah. So it's probably more accurate to say I'm as close to a centrist as you probably meet. Running my own business, I understand the imperatives of a free market. I understand the struggles that small and medium businesses go through on a daily basis and the necessity of those to support our economy and to support our country. Equally, I understand the value of unions and a collective voice to argue for those who can't fight for themselves. For me, more than anything, it comes down to empathy. You need to truly empathise with the entire spectrum of the society in which you live. And I readily agree that there is a well-worn path through political channels, that through a union movement, through a council, through a mayorship, through staffing, through Young Labor or Young Liberal. And I do think they're important. I think if all you had in Parliament were people like me, it would probably be entirely dysfunctional, because I don't have as deep an understanding of the way bills are produced and the process of developing through the parliamentary system. And so I think that's vitally important. At the end of the day, we're creating laws on a daily basis. So you do need to have legal minds in that field. There are political imperatives at play. So you do need to have people who are political animals in that field. I think think of it very much like a sporting team. I played a lot of soccer when I was young. Now, if all you've got is forwards, you're not going to win. If all you've got is defence, you're not going to win. You need to have a blend of people who have the kind of life experiences that I've had or the opportunities that I've had in my life, but equally you need people who have a different perspective on that to be able to counterbalance those conversations. And I think
should be a fair balance. It should represent the community. Political animals, people who are permanent union, probably is 0.5% of the population. Not everybody is political animal. People are lawyers, people who are working in trades, working in businesses. I think it's a good representation across all sectors is much better.
Well, that's one of the things I'm actually proud of with the New South Wales government. Now we have teachers, we have lawyers, we have people who have come from the union movement and people who have come from business. We've got a layer of experience through multicultural Australia. We've got a layer of experience through all walks of life, male, female, almost every demographic you can think of. So when we walk into caucus as a collective and conversations that we have in there, there is very much people coming from different angles, which I think helps you craft more all-encompassing laws. And one of the harder things to appreciate when you're in this job is every decision you make, someone is going to benefit and someone is going to lose.
You're right.
It's an inevitability. There is no single policy that you can come out and everyone is going to be happy with. So for me, it's always the collective right of society versus the individual right of a person. And it's not to say that individual rights are not important, but the reality is we are social beings and we live in a collective society. So that the imperatives of the collective society...
So collective right sits over the individual right?
Yeah.
Okay. What are the key lessons learned from the Bondi tragedy and the way your government has taken action? And then what you're planning to do in the future to safeguard no repeat of these things and then create more cohesion in the communities?
Look, Bondi was such a earth-shattering event for Australians. It was inconceivable. The shock that we saw as a result of that is incidents like that happen somewhere else. If you ever see something like that come across your news feed, your automatic assumption is this is something from somewhere else. We have lived in a society that is overwhelmingly harmonious, overwhelmingly prepared to live with one another, and to have that happen, particularly at a cultural or a faith event of such significance, absolutely earth-shattering experience for Australian society. I'm not entirely sure, and I guess I need to be a little bit careful about how I say this. Well, I'm entirely sure that we cannot broad brush any single individual group for the actions of individual people who chose a path that is horrific. Unfortunately, we've seen some of that play out, that the choices of somebody, and people make these poor choices, almost on a daily basis, never on a scale of this magnitude. But the temperature has been rising in Australia, and again, in my mind, that rising temperature is not because people are inherently racist or inherently culturally insensitive. It's because their lives are being affected directly by the circumstances of both national decisions and global decisions that materially impact their lives. So that metastasizes, if you like, into looking for someone to blame or looking for something to blame. And when someone is claiming to be an Islamic terrorist, people who are not engaged in the Muslim faith, for example, or understanding of the broader nuances within multicultural groups, here's the word Islamic, associates with Islam, associates with Muslim faith. I think it's fundamentally not true. There are, if you're going to broad brush things like that, you start saying that all people are this or all people are that. One of the things, all politicians are corrupt, and I get frustrated by that rhetoric because, number one, it normalises behaviour, and number two, when that behaviour comes out, it's an expectation rather than a shock. So I think one of the things that we had already put in train as a government beforehand was we had a faith council set up. We have deep multicultural engagement. We were working on hate speech laws. We're working on the kinds of things to bring that temperature down and to try and do a better job of explaining to our population what the benefits of migration is, the necessity of migration to Australia, but also how that allows us to grow into the future. I think that was a bit of a setback for that. But I also think if you step away from the microscope for a little bit and you look at as an overarching thing, people commit horrendous crimes for all sorts of reasons. The Bondi stabbing, as an example, there were mental health issues, and the gentleman was targeting women. In my mind, that is not necessarily any more horrific than someone who is motivated by a hatred of a particular religion or faith. These core hatreds are, in many ways, in a large multicultural society, unavoidable. How do we mitigate that? We have very strong laws around anti-terrorism. We have a lot of powers given to police, and we have very strong societal constructs that help to limit the capacity for that to happen, not least of which the overarching Australian way of life. Just last night I was driving down the street. It was about 10 o'clock at night, and relatively dark street, and I saw a woman standing there on her own. She had a phone with her. She was just walking along, minding her own business. And I thought to myself, there are very few countries in the world where somebody would feel safe walking down a dark laneway by themselves with no sense of protection. So we do have a largely harmonious society. We do have the simple fact that an event like this is as shocking as it is, indicates how calm and peaceful we are. And you contrast that with something like the United States, who don't even bother on mass school shootings anymore because they're so common. What I was going to say about stepping back from that and having a look at how we've moved as a society. During my lifetime, we have gone from a White Australia policy very specifically designed to be exclusive of people throughout the world and intolerant of certain sectors of migration, to being told being released and being told we need to tolerate new migrants. The language changed to we need to accept new migrants. And this is good, but you tolerate something that you don't really like. You accept something that you can't change. And we've now moved into celebrating our diversity and understanding the strength in our diversity, and that being part of the national conversation, and people broadly understanding the valuable contributions that migrants make into our country. So we have seen a shift in that direction. And then when an incident like this happens, and it definitely takes us back a couple of steps. But one of the points that I made in a social media post not long after it is I quoted the Quran, and in the Quran it says to kill an innocent is to kill all humankind. And we saw that with people who were proclaiming to be followers of the Islamic faith. But the Quran also says to save one life is to save all humanity. And we also saw someone from the Muslim faith do exactly that. So do we highlight those that have very specifically gone against the teachings of the Quran and say this is what the Muslim faith is about, or do we focus on the person who actually adhered to the teachings of the Quran and saved many, many lives by his actions. And for me, the vast majority of Muslims sit in the side of following the Quran. They want a peaceful life. They want a good society. So I think we need to, again, not look at the broad brush. I look at an Islamic terrorist versus a Muslim in a similar way to a Catholic versus someone from the KKK. Or a Hindu and a Hindu nationalist, or someone from the Sikh faith and a Khalistani. They're not the same thing.
You're right. Yeah, I think on the broad brush, I have people keep on asking, or generally, there's a broad statement, or again, broad brush statement is Australia is a racist country, and then people ask me that question. So because I'm an engineer, I will not take 2 or 3 incidents of people who are not smart or saying something off their head to extrapolate that to people to all of the country. So same as that example, that you can't use 2 or 3 incidents as because there are exceptions. Every community has good and bad people, and every culture had good and bad part of their culture. Doesn't mean that you are a new culture to the community. It is good. All of it is good. I think people need to understand that every community and every group and every culture brings good and bad. And it is just the understanding of everybody so that we can manage the bad very well. Which doesn't mean that you are from that culture, everything what you bring to the table is good.
Absolutely. And further to that, we have good and bad in every society, as you say. We struggle to say that person is just a bad person. It's got nothing to do with the colour of their skin, the faith that they follow, the education that they've had perhaps has a bit more to do with it. But there are people, not many, who tend towards criminality. There are people who like to drive manual cars over automatic cars. You don't say everybody who drives a manual is of this particular grouping. They're across all sectors, and in a broad society of millions of people, you inherently have people who have bad motives. And I'll preface this with I'm firmly of the belief that the vast majority of people do what they believe is the right thing to do with the information that they have available. Now, we can question, is that the right thing by them as an individual, them as representing their family, them representing their broader community, where does that extend to in somebody's mind? But there are very, very few people who are nasty, horrible people for the sake of being nasty, horrible people.
I agree with you.
But there are. Undoubtedly, those people exist. We have examples of that on the global stage right now, where, for reasons I don't fully fathom, have gotten into positions of extreme power and are wielding that power with impunity. But I believe that they're the exception, not the rule, and I don't see any compelling evidence to suggest that their faith, their country of origin, the language they speak, the colour of their skin, has anything to do with them just being horrible people. And yet, as a society, when something as shocking as Bondi or a protest march that gets out of control or things like that, we have to attribute something to that more than that person is just a horrible person. And perhaps that's also because there are many others like me who believe most people are inherently good. So they struggle to rationalise, how has this happened? How could it possibly have happened? It must be their faith that has driven them that way.
Can you also, you talked about the idea of collective right and individual right. And then because we are discussing Bondi and things around it, collective right and individual right, and everybody has right to speech in reason. So, the reason is defined by the government, that those terms and those kind of protests are not allowed, not acceptable. So how do you draw the line between when does the collective right, so right now I have individual right to speech, but when does my individual right or collective right supersedes? When does collective right supersedes an individual right?
Well, I'd say it's not so much the government that decides what's acceptable, it's actually society that decides what's acceptable. Now, we are blessed to live in what I consider to be the best country in the world. As an individual, if you are truly 100% for individual rights, you can jump in a car, drive 4 or 5, 6 hours west, set yourself up a little farm, get a couple of goats, cow, whatever you want, and live completely off the grid, and then you are only responsible for yourself. But people don't want that. People want roads to drive on. People want trains to catch, buses to catch, schools for their kids to go to. These are part of the collective that people need to contribute to. This is why we have taxation. People need to have the right to express themselves, and people need to have the right to have their voices heard. If you disagree with those, you also have the right to then counter that and engage in a respectful conversation about what your perspective versus somebody else's perspective. And our perspectives are simply the net result of our life experiences. Our education, our personal experiences, all of these shape who we are as an individual. I think you always have to be careful about the concept of right versus wrong in these conversations, but a lot of it comes down to respect and empathy for an individual's point of view. So I don't think there's any defined tipping point of now it's all about the collective and now it's all part of the individual. I think the two can coexist with one another, but each needs to respect the needs for one another. You know, you might like really loud music and you happen to work night shift versus day shift. That doesn't give you the right to play Megadeth at level 10 on your stereo in a suburban street when everybody else in that street is trying to sleep because they work through the day shift. It's about respecting the wants and needs of one another and understanding how is my individual actions negatively impacting all of these other people, and is that fair and reasonable for me to put my priorities over and above those of 10, 50, a million others.
So one extreme end of individual right is going 4 hours far and then living by yourself, and on the other extreme end, if all it is collective, if you are living in a whole communal system and if all it is collective, but to police all of that communal activity, there'll be more sub-departments, sub-legislations to be created on almost everything. So if it is all collective, then why do we need an individual rights? Why it can be privileges only? You have a privilege to speak, but the government defines, we define, as a collective defines what you're allowed to speak or not.
Because we're people, right? Now, communism, let's look at the two extremes of the spectrum. On one side, communism, you are entirely dictated exactly what you can and can't do, how much money you can earn, all of those sorts of things. Now,
so that's the extreme end of collective.
Yeah. And that fundamentally undermines basic human nature, the desire to make the life for you and your family better than the generation before. The need to advance yourself, the need to progress. Human beings, since the inception of human beings, have always progressed towards making life just that little bit easier, that little bit better. And the purest form of communism has no scope for that whatsoever. If you go onto the other end of the spectrum, what's preventing you from walking down the street and shooting somebody in the head? What's preventing you from espousing all kinds of nasty rhetoric out of your mouth and violent behaviour through your actions? Raping people. I mean, there are all sorts of things. If it's left entirely up to the individual, then it can even oddly create a herd mentality when if somebody does something, it becomes more acceptable for other people to do it. And then you have entire chaos and anarchy. And that is equally, if not more damaging than complete repression of a society. So there is a middle ground. There is a way to bring that together. We want to have a safe society, and the reality of human nature is that unless we have consequences for bad behaviour, there will be people who will take advantage of that. On the other side, and China has proved this over recent years, you have to have the capacity for people to advance their own lives within a communist system in order to have a harmonious society, because you will find people within that society that will subvert the collective need because of their primal instinct to move forward.
The elections are coming soon, in an year and a half?
Yeah, just under a year.
Yeah. And what are the key conversations you are having with your electorate? And what are the key focus areas you will be focusing in the next term if you come back?
Mine are very much the same as what they were when I moved in. It's just that the outcome is slightly different. So we are still very much behind in terms of the infrastructure needs. We have quite a number of major road arterials that were never created that are necessary to move people around. We have a significant shortfall in the connectivity to major transport hubs. As an individual example, we have a metro line that finishes 2.5 kilometres from connecting up with a heavy rail line and doesn't connect through into a community that desperately needs it. That needs to move forward. We have a lack of job infrastructure in the area that needs to be uplifted. I see the northwest growth area broadly, including the suburbs that are outside of my electorate that are impacted by this, as being a jigsaw puzzle with a number of pieces that are missing. There is still a lot of work that needs to be done to fill those jigsaw puzzle pieces in, so the whole thing works as a coherent and cohesive package instead of the piecemeal approach that has been taken up to now. And if you use a different analogy from a jigsaw and think of the human body, we have major arteries that fill the capillaries, and it keeps us all functioning. Now, if you suddenly have a major artery taken away from your arm, that's a major problem. There needs to be some kind of bypass to allow that to happen, and so therefore you're putting pressure on things that were never designed to be able to take that. And that's what we see in our road network, what we see in our schools, what we see in the basic functioning of society is these key elements that are required are just not there. And so we've made a good start on that. We've got 4 schools. We'll have one opening day 1 term 2 this year, day 1 term 3 this year, and day 1 term 1 next year. We've got another one that is going to begin construction and be open at the beginning of 2028. That's a good start. It's not the end of it. There are more schools that need to be built. We have major commercial infrastructure that needs to go in place. At the moment, I've got around about 84% of the electorate has to leave the electorate to get to work every day because there's no local job infrastructure. Because the housing is so densely packed in and it's such a young population with so many children, the need for parks, green space, and sporting fields is really, really important. That needs to be addressed. We have problems with childcare. We have problems with aged care. All of these things are things that need to be worked on, and we are moving in the right direction, but we haven't quite gotten it over the line. We've got Rousseau Hospital, great start, under construction. It will be completed. Nothing can stop that now. But it's not the only thing. Metro is not the only thing. Bus connectivity is not the only thing. It is all of this as a collective that we need to get put in place. So my mission and what I've said from day one is to get those gaps filled, and when we're in some kind of position where that is actually done and completed and we're working together, I'm sure that there will be other things to do, but that's until that focus has gone away, that's what I'll continue achieving.
Lovely. My last concluding question for you is, As a default, it is another broad brush that Australians are very apathetic towards politics. For a young Australian who was keen on understanding, where they sit, their value system from a political point of view, what's your message in terms of what things they should be doing, getting involved in local advocacy groups or local charities or political movement of their kind? What's your message for young people to start joining politics of some sort or some way or form so that we have more thriving democracy?
My position on this, and it's been clear for quite a long time now, is if you think all politicians are idiots, that's a reason for you to enter politics.
Yeah.
Either through the branch system, and both Liberal and Labor and Greens, all of the other parties have a branch system. Find something that you broadly identify with, and very, very broad brush. People on the right of politics tend to believe in individual rights over collective rights. People on the left tend to believe more about the collective right over the individual right. Greens are obviously very concerned about environmental situation. One Nation, I'm not sure, other than their anti-migration message, exactly what they stand for. But broadly, identify a party that resonates with you and your personal ideals, even if the individual policies are not what you want them to be, because in a not dissimilar way to me, with the realisation to stop shouting at the outside of the building and getting a seat on the inside. People will only listen to you if you're sitting at the table. So join some kind of collective group and have your voice heard, because at the end of the day, people only end up with a seat in Parliament, in a seat of representing a community, because they're the people that are in the room.
Yeah.
And if you're not in the room, you're not getting selected. It's as simple as that. So I encourage everybody to, rather than be apathetic and cynical about the political process, I would suggest that's more of a reason for you to go, I can do something about this. I can get in and my voice can be heard, and I can shift the needle on this particular policy. I think this policy is okay, but it needs to have a bit more of this. Get involved, make that voice heard.
I like the quote from Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney. He says, if you're not on the table, you're on the menu.
Yeah, very much so. And I also, a quote from Albanese that resonated with me as well, something that he said in question time one time, was that we have to stop thinking about politics in particular like sporting clubs. People are diehard fans of one club over another, and they will always be a supporter of that club, irrespective of that.
Whether they lose all their life.
Life is more nuanced than that. It is not simply one is good, one is bad. Both major parties and minor parties also have valuable contributions to make, and their voices should be heard. And it's not necessarily that you take on board what they say wholesale, but you accept that. And and I'll even go as far as to say some of the rhetoric that I hear from people who are flag-waving One Nation supporters, and some of the things that they say, hard to argue with. Migration needs to be managed. Of course it does. It needs to be targeted towards the skill sets we need. Yes, of course it does. But these things are already happening. There is oversight that is free from political interference with Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, that identifies the areas of skills that we need in this country and the number of people that we need to have to fulfil those roles. It is not done for political purposes. It's not done because we want more people from a particular country to come into this country. It's done because this is what our country needs. And I guess the more that you become engaged in that overarching conversation, the more you can understand what the rationale is to start with, and ways that you can modify it more towards what you think of that. And the alternative to that question of migration is, okay, what does that do to our economy? Say, for example, we do what some people are asking and just shut the doors altogether. Well, Where are we going to get around about 20% of our healthcare workforce?
Yeah.
Are we going to just get rid of those services altogether? And then what does that mean for your family? What about our aged care sector? What about our disability sector? What about our logistics trains? You know, all of these, the things that we rely on a day-to-day basis that is largely unseen, are reliant on our population increasing and our economic growth. Now, if you think that that is the wrong direction to go in, okay, one of the methods to change that is stopping migration. But there are a lot of consequences to doing that.
Yeah.
So we have to fundamentally reframe the concept of continuous growth within an economy. We have to fundamentally change how we develop as a society, because we are not bringing those new ideas in. We're not, the net result is inevitably a regression rather than a progression. And if that's what we actually want as a society, if we do want to regress back to the 1950s, how do we change that in an interconnected global society? How do we manage that? Because they're much, much deeper questions and much, much harder questions to answer. But until we're prepared to have those conversations, these things need to be recognised and valued.
Thank you. Thank you, Warren, for your time. Thanks a lot.
No problem. Thank you.